guys, how are you? I hope everyone is hanging in there with the COVID-19 quarantine right now. I'm here to do a video to talk about extended fasting today. Now, extended fasting is not something that I recommend, especially for new fasters, but there are a lot of people out there that are doing intermittent fasting and maybe thinking of doing an extended fast. So I did want to cover the topic just so that people are aware of some of the things you should be watching out for. All right, so an extended fast is anything past 24 hours. So intermittent fasting is when you fast less than 24 hours. So anything from like 16 hours to 24 would be intermittent fasting. Extended fasting would be anything over 24 hours. Now, I don't recommend fasting for more than 4 days in a row for anybody. And the reason for that is refeeding syndrome, and that's something that I'll talk a little bit about today. So refeeding syndrome occurs usually after 5 days, and that's why I recommend only fasting up to 4 days, because you're less likely to run into refeeding syndrome. Refeeding syndrome is when you have an imbalance in your electrolytes and fluids when you resume eating after a longer fast. So any fast over 5 days, you're at risk of refeeding syndrome. So it's a sudden and dangerous shift in your electrolytes and your fluids in the body, and that can cause neurological problems, heart problems, and breathing problems, and can even cause death. So it is quite serious. So if you're going to be doing a longer fast, say longer than 4 days, I would recommend that you're followed by a doctor. And anyone starting a new eating regimen or fasting protocol, even doing intermittent fasting, it's a good idea to check with your doctor first, just to see if your electrolytes are balanced and that you are healthy enough to do this. All right, so there are ways to prevent refeeding syndrome. So if you are doing an extended fast, first being aware that you should be supplementing with electrolytes throughout your fast. This is sodium, potassium, magnesium are the main ones. And I've talked before about the electrolyte water, but very quickly, in 1 8-ounce glass of water, you want about a half a teaspoon of sea salt, a half a teaspoon of salt-free, and which is your potassium, or cream of tartar has potassium, and you could do about a half a teaspoon of baking soda as well, and stir that up and sip on that as you go about your day. So in addition to supplementing electrolytes throughout your fast, when you're ready to break your fast, you're going to want to just eat a small meal. So only eat about half the calories that day that you're breaking your fast that you normally would. You might even want to first break your fast with a little bit of bone broth or chicken broth, something that's lower in sodium, before having your meal. So you might want to just have a little bit of broth just to prep your digestive system that hasn't had any food in it for several days before eating your main meal. Something else that you might want to do are take some digestive enzymes. Because you haven't eaten, your digestive enzymes will kind of take a back seat, so that when you do start eating again, you might need those extra digestive enzymes, and you can get those at the health food store. When you're refeeding, you should not consume alcohol. So that first day that you're refeeding, do not have your meal with a glass of wine or beer or something like that. Just avoid having alcohol, because that will really stress the system. And it'll take away from your ability to metabolize the food that you're eating as well. Okay, so you're going to also want to avoid high sodium food. That will just throw off your electrolyte balance. And you're going to want to include some protein. And you're also probably going to want to have more fat and less carbohydrates. So you want to avoid spiking insulin after a long fast. So carbohydrates do spike insulin a lot faster, especially processed foods. So don't be eating processed foods. Choose whole foods to break your fast with. And you're going to also want to avoid FODMAP foods. So FODMAP foods are things like wheat and beans, Brussels sprouts, cauliflowers, garlic, onions, mushrooms, asparagus, snow peas, stone fruits. These can cause a lot of digestive problems. So especially if you're someone that suffers from IBS, you're really going to want to avoid those FODMAP foods. So if you just Google FODMAP foods, you can get a list of high FODMAP foods there, but those are some of the ones that may cause you more digestive issues, bloating and gas, just because they're harder for your body to digest. All right, so I think that is most of what I wanted to cover as far as refeeding. So like I said before, a fast of 5 days or more, you're at risk of refeeding syndrome. If you were to fast greater than 10 days, then you are definitely at higher risk. If you have an electrolyte balance, you're also at higher risk. So it's really important to be drinking that electrolyte water throughout your fast. So for the first day after breaking your fast, your first day of refeeding, I do recommend just sipping on a little bit of broth a couple hours before you plan to have your first meal. And then for that first meal, you just want to make it a small meal. So half the calories that you would normally consume in a meal. So maybe a chicken leg and some, tomatoes and cucumbers with some olive oil. That might be a good first meal to break your fast with. And then the next day, again, you're going to probably only want to have 2 meals, so not eating a whole lot. So have 2 meals, again, following the same protocols, lower in carbs and higher in fat and protein. And then the third day, you should be fine to eat as you normally do. Okay, so that's about that. So the reasons you might want to do an extended fast, even though I don't recommend going over 4 days, is that after 3 days, that it is said that the entire immune system is revamped. So that has been shown to boost immunity. And people have also reported a lot of healing doing longer fasts. So if you are really suffering from a digestion problem and you really want to heal your digestive system, then you may want to consider an extended fast. Again, I recommend highly that you go see your doctor, have a physical, talk to them about fasting. Maybe they can help you by checking your electrolytes and things like that. Extended fasting is also great for people that have significant weight to lose. People that calorie restrict, they have shown, lose 25% of their lean muscle, whereas when you're fasting, you only lose about 10% of your lean muscle when you're fasting. So it really does help you to retain your muscle while you're losing weight, which is a bonus because lean muscle helps keep your metabolism up and also helps you to live longer, and just helps you to look leaner. So often when you're losing weight, the scale is not a good measure of that. So you may lose the same amount of weight if you're calorie restricting and fasting, but when you're fasting, you're actually maintaining more muscle, and that's hard to tell on the scale. So I do recommend that before your fast that you do measurements. So measure your arms, your biceps, your thighs, your waist, your hips, and your legs as well. So take lots of measurements so that you can tell before and after, because you will drop water weight, and then when you stop your fast, you will put on that water weight again. So the scale is a really poor measure of whether you've lost any fat. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at lowcarbgrandma@gmail.com. I'm happy to help you to get started with fasting. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.